Hi, hello everybody, I'm Justin, this is Koopa, and welcome to Koopa's Corner. Today we're going to talk about Pokémon Legends ZA. The game's been out for like 2 or 3 weeks now. I didn't want to do this right away because I wanted to be able to play through it, and I wanted to give everybody else a chance to play through it without spoiling really anything. So that's why we're doing kind of a little bit of a review here. And we've kind of waited a couple of weeks to do so. Now I want to talk about the game because it's been getting a lot of criticism, and I don't normally do just like a blanket review. Normally I would do something, about it, battling or catching or something, I don't know. But I wouldn't normally just do like a blanket review like this, but there's been a lot of criticism. And some of it's warranted, for sure. It's not the best game that Pokemon's ever made. But overall, I had a pretty fun experience playing this game. So I want to talk about some of the highlights of the game, then talk about some of the criticisms that I have, and just kind of the overall experience to wrap it up. So let's start off with what is Pokémon Legends ZA. For those of you who may not have played it yourself, or may not be super familiar with it, the Legends franchise of Pokemon is like a spin-off series, right? So it started with Legends Arceus, which took you back in time to ancient Sinnoh, which they renamed Hisui, and it changed a lot about Pokemon, about how we play Pokemon, about what we know about Pokemon, right? Not only were Pokemon spawning in the overworld, which is something they've been experimenting with even in the main franchise games, but you didn't need to battle them to catch them. You could just run around and throw Pokeballs, which is a little bit more realistic to how things would be in real life. Now, Legends Arceus might be my personal favorite Pokemon game of all time. They nailed it. The narrative was great. The storytelling, the setting in ancient times made it feel very different from what it is. And that game was so successful, they decided to keep the Legends franchise as its own separate series, and that brings us to Legends ZA. Legends ZA takes us back to Kalos, which is the setting for Pokemon X and Pokemon Y. Now, instead of going back to ancient times or to any sort of weird time period, we're only 5 years in the future, which we're 10 years out from X and Y. So, right, this is not that far of a jump from the story of X and Y. So, first of all, this game really feels like you need to have played X and Y to understand some of the story elements. Now, if you didn't, that's okay. You can still play the game, and you can still have a ton of fun with it. But you're going to miss out on some of those narrative aspects. So that's the first criticism that I have. It's tied very directly to the storyline of X and Y, and there's enough where you can kind of get the gist of what's going on. But there are definitely moments where you might not fully understand or appreciate what's happening. But all in all, the story was pretty decent for a spin-off series, right? It focused on Mega Evolution, bringing back Mega Evolution. It's the first time we've really gone back to Mega Evolution since it was first introduced in Generation 6 in Pokemon X and Pokemon Y. 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. And it's really, the story is very heavily focused on Mega Evolution. So that's one of the big pros, in my opinion, that return to Mega Evolution. Not only did we return to it, but they sort of warped the idea of what it was and what it could be, and they sort of modernized it a little bit. In Pokemon X, you could only Mega Evolve one Pokemon once per battle, and once they were Mega Evolved, and they were pretty broken. Here, you have like a meter, a gauge at the bottom. You fill it with energy. You can Mega Evolve. It depletes the energy. They turn back. You can have multiple members of your team with Mega Stones that Mega Evolve, which is actually one of the criticisms that I have. Not that you can, but that it almost feels like you have to have a team that can all Mega Evolve, or almost all Mega Evolve, right? The Pokemon that can't feel like they just are missing a little bit. They aren't hitting as hard. So I felt discouraged from playing with some of my favorites in favor of playing with some that could Mega Evolve, right? Very minor criticism, very minor. There's a diverse selection of Pokemon that can Mega Evolve, and this game added a bunch of new ones. So, you know, you do have some option. It's not like you're pigeonholed into a small sect of Pokemon, right? But yeah, the focus on Mega Evolution overall is a big pro for this game for me. Just like Legends Arceus, you're running around, and Pokemon are spawning in the overworld, and you don't have to battle them to catch them. You can just throw balls, and they kind of took all of the gameplay elements that Legends introduced, or Legends Arceus introduced, and they took it from Ancient Sinnoh and they modernized it. They married it with, you know, sort of the gameplay from Scarlet and Violet, which is the last Pokemon game that we had, is the last main series Pokemon game that we had. And you have, you know, instead of the ancient Pokeball, the Heavy Ball, or the Feather Ball, you have, you know, all of the Pokeballs that we know and love, from Quick Balls, Repeat Balls, Luxury Balls, Premier Balls, Pokeballs, Great Balls, Ultra Balls, like everything that you're familiar with from a modern Pokemon game is there in this game, and it kind of married the two gameplay styles. And I think they did a really good job of that. There was a big focus on revamping the battle system, so instead of a turn-based battle system where you really just kind of have to know your type matchups, there's sort of a real-time element to it. You can sort of run back and forth, and your Pokemon will run with you, so you can dodge attacks that way. You can lock on and perform an attack. You can run around behind them and lock on and do another attack. You can spam attacks. You can hold off for your timing. You can time certain attacks like Fly or Dig to dodge certain attacks, right? And overall, the battling mechanics in this game you can tell us what they put the most time and effort into, because it's very different from what we've ever had in a Pokemon game. And they did a really good job. It was a lot of fun. So I think that's another big, big positive for this game. I think, that being said, we have a couple big positives. I think there was some valid criticism, and I think the biggest one for me is you're not exploring all of Kalos. You are trapped within Lumiose City. Which I understand why they did it, and I understand narratively why it was important to do it. But I think that you're missing out on a lot from around Kalos, and I think that it detracts from the game a bit. It all feels the same. You're in this one big city, and it all feels the same. Whichever part of the map you go to, it all feels the same. I have a hard time differentiating, you know, early game to mid game to late game, because none of it feels different. You're running back and forth the same places on the same map. The wild zones are small. They don't really feel that sense of exploration. Like, if they're just, you can, I don't know how to describe this the best way, but you come in on one side and you can see the other side. There's, you know, the wilds of Hisui in Pokemon Legends Arceus made you feel like you were exploring the wilderness, and that these wild, ancient, rampaging Pokemon really wanted to attack you. And there was something exciting about it. And here, the wild zones miserably failed to capture that same element. They feel tiny. They feel, you know, constrained. You know, it almost feels like you're in an exhibit at a zoo rather than a wild area for wild Pokemon. And I understand the challenges of how do we put wild Pokemon into this big city environment, right? And it just didn't quite work, which is why I think that you might have been better off being able to explore a little bit more of Kalos, and maybe Lumiose City was your home base. I also think that, kind of to the same point, you know, the game starts off, we only have a couple of wild zones, and as you progress, you get more and more and more. By the end, there's all these parts of the city that you've been running through all game that are now contained in wild zones. And again, it just makes the city feel even smaller. So that's one of my biggest complaints for the game. And then the other big complaint that I have is the cutscene animation every time you go from day to night or night to day. I understand that, like, within the game, that's when the, like, street battling activates. But unless I go into, like, a battle area and engage in a battle, I don't want that cutscene. And there are a lot of times I'd be in the middle of battling an alpha Pokemon, and I'd be, like, halfway down their health, and then it just is gone because of the cutscene. But my first 2 Pokemon that died in the battle are still KO'd. Like, I still have all the repercussions of it, but things are just interrupted. It is very interrupted. Give me the cutscene if I engage in a battle or if I go into the battle zone. But if I'm just doing other stuff and I'm not battling on that particular night in the game, I don't want to deal with that cutscene. That was very annoying for me. It's one of the things that really just interrupted my gameplay, and it took me kind of out of the moment. But all in all, I had a pretty fun time playing this game. It had a lot of the whimsy that Legends Arceus introduced, and it modernized it. It married it to modern Pokemon. I'd be very surprised if, you know, the main franchise games going forward don't incorporate this battle mechanic as opposed to the traditional turn-based battle systems that we know. I'd be surprised if we don't see elements of this game kind of reverberating permanently in the future. You know, hopefully Mega Evolutions continue to stick around after this, now that they've sort of revamped how it worked. You know, after Mega Evolutions, they were a bit OP. They tried something else. They tried Z-moves. That didn't really work. They tried Dynamax. That was not quite as good either. Then there was Terrestrialization in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Cool idea, but they looked awful, you know. I'm sure you've seen the meme of the Persian with the ring pop on its head. It just, yeah, it was a cool idea that you could change a Pokemon's type, but it didn't really work. Of all of these kind of one-off gimmicks that each generation was introduced, Mega Evolution was by far the best one. And some of the designs for the Mega Evolved Pokemon are not the greatest. Some of them are actually really cool. You know, for every Mega Starmie, there's a Mega Lucario, or a Mega Blaziken, right? So, yes, some of them are ugly, but some of them are really cool, and some of them are just fun, like Mega Victory Bell, right? Not a great design, but I thought it was funny. I liked it. You know, whereas I cannot say the same thing about Mega Starmie, unfortunately. You know, and I always liked Starmie as a Pokemon, too. It had, especially, you know, playing in the early days, you know, Pokemon Red version was the first game that I played in the Pokemon franchise. I go all the way back to the originals, you know, and Starmie could learn Psychic and Thunderbolt, and it could have a range of coverage moves that you didn't get in a lot of water types, which made him, you know, a really fun water type to use. But Mega Starmie is just, it's ugly, and it's bad, and I hate it. So, yeah. Anyway, I just, you know, I don't think all of the criticism has necessarily been warranted. You know, everyone's entitled to their opinion. If you didn't enjoy the game, then you didn't enjoy the game. But people are talking about how bad it was, you know, with 100 hours in the game. Like, why did you play it that much if you hated it? Why didn't you stop playing when you realized you hated it? Why didn't you, you know, after the first couple of days, day or two, try to get a refund because the gameplay was not what you expected, right? I think that, for me, I don't look at Pokemon the same way I would at other gaming franchises. I'm not expecting the best graphics or these crazy stories or, you know, this really intense gameplay. With Pokemon, you kind of know what you're going to get, and either you're on board with it or you're not. And this was very much on board with Pokemon. This lived up to expectations. And Pokemon, in the trailers leading to the release, they were very upfront about, this is what we've done. We've changed the battle mechanics. It's all in real time now. Mega Evolution is back. you know, those were kind of the two big selling points, and those were kind of the two big things that this game had to offer. Otherwise, it felt pretty standard for a Pokemon game. I don't think it really dipped below that expectation, and I don't think it warranted all of the hate that it got. So, you know, you're entitled to your opinion, but, you know, it's one thing to not like the game, and it's another thing to go online and to be super vocal and to sort of insult other people for spending money on the game and for enjoying the game. If they've enjoyed it, that is completely valid as well. Let people enjoy what they enjoy. And just try to be nicer to one another. Because overall, this wasn't a bad game. It was a pretty standard Pokemon game that introduced a couple of things, and it nailed those things pretty well. And it was fun. At the end of the day, it was a fun experience playing through this game. So that's my take on Pokémon Legends ZA. Guys, of all of the new megas, let me know in the comment, which one is your favorite? Which one is your least favorite? I know Mega Starmie, awful. If it's not your least favorite, I want to know which one is. Which one do you think is worse? But which one is your favorite? Because I think this one's more up for debate. Just let me know. I'd love to engage. I'd love to chat. I'd love to talk about this stuff a little bit more. So feel free to leave a comment. Like, please, I'll be happy to engage. And, like, let's chat about some of these new megas. But, yeah, I think that's all I really have to say about this, guys. So, hey, thank you so much for watching. And we'll see you in the next one.